Bhutan's location, sandwiched between the colossal powers of China and India, has led this small Himalayan kingdom to become extremely protective of its own culture and political autonomy. In a bid to keep out foreign influence, the internet and television were banned until 1999, and its people are still mandated to wear traditional dress in government buildings. In the early 1990s, protective measures like these took a drastic turn. The country's mostly Hindu ethnic Nepalese minority had grown to represent 1/3 of the population, a development seen as an ethnic, cultural and linguistic threat to the country's Buddhist majority. About 100,000 of the minority were forced to leave, and 17 years later they remain stateless, just 200 kilometers west of Bhutan in 7 UN-administered camps in eastern Nepal. There, they live in wattle and daub houses and cook with solar-powered heaters provided by the United Nations. As refugees, Nepal denies them the right to work, so the women earn a small living by spinning wool. The children are usually found down by the river, collecting stones by the bank and breaking them into gravel to sell to local building contractors. Many young men and fathers leave the camps for months on end to work illegally in India and bring home a more substantial wage. An estimated 80 to 100,000 ethnic Nepalese still live in Bhutan. Refugees like N.B. Giri, on occasion, set out on a kind of pilgrimage from Nepal, across the strip of India that separates it from Bhutan, to the Indian border town of Jaigaon. It is only there, in India, he says, can the refugees meet their loved ones without the danger of retribution in Bhutan. Giri has been making this journey for 17 years, in the hope that each year would be the last of this imposed separation. But then, in 2007, a new avenue opened up. The United States offered to resettle more than 60,000 of these refugees. That's over half of the camp's population, and many refugees, like Giri, jumped at the chance to start a new life elsewhere. Not everyone was as enthusiastic. In recent years, several small militant groups have developed in the camps to try and achieve what they say politics has failed to do, assure a return to Bhutan for the refugees. Now, faced with the evaporation of over half of their people through resettlement, these groups initially turned their rancor on those considering resettlement, who they deemed traitors to the cause. Most of the militant groups are Maoist. They gained ideological and tactical inspiration from the larger Maoist insurgency that came to power in Nepal in 2008 after a 10-year civil war. With names like the Communist Party of Bhutan, the United Revolutionary Front of Bhutan, and the Tiger Forces, these groups attract the young men of the camps to their ranks, many of whom join unbeknownst to their wives and families. This lady, Dawadalma Damang, thought her husband was working in a cement factory in Indian Kashmir until she opened up the paper one day to discover he had been killed making explosives for the Communist Party of Bhutan in Siliguri, a city 30 kilometers away across the border in India. Other men penetrate Bhutan's porous jungle border regions and meet up with other Maoists inside, ethnic Nepalese still living in Bhutan and willing to fight for change there. When Bhutan held its first election and transitioned successfully to a constitutional monarchy in 2008, the country was hit by a series of homemade bombs, which insurgent leaders in the camps tell me were planted by their cadres. But Bhutan's leaders say they are not concerned. The threat is small, they explain, and their weapon of choice now is democracy. By extending rights to all through democratic representation, Bhutan's leaders hope to quell any appetite for a domestic insurrection. But is Bhutanese democracy strong enough? An Indian intelligence source, on the condition of remaining anonymous, told me that these insurgent groups have started to establish alliances with much better organised and funded Indian separatist groups, like the NDFB and ULFA, in the nearby Indian province of Assam. And the resettlement itself also may inadvertently help their cause. 6,000 people have already left for the United States, many of them political moderates, and that trend is expected to continue, leaving a more hardline and sympathetic core in the camps. Bhutan is currently reducing the size of its army, but what is now an embryonic resistance in exile could become a problem the country can't ignore.